welcome to another round of the BRSCC Mazda MX-5 Championship. This weekend we're in a very sunny Donington Park. Now for the first time ever, our drivers are gracing the GP track here, which is going to add a bit of spice to this weekend. Now race 1A is about to get underway and Stephen Fodden has put it on pole. So we're going to hand it straight over to Andy McEwan to run you through all of the action.
Thanks, Lindsay. Well, Steve had a successful weekend here last year. He's started off again now, exactly where he left off with pole position. Joe Wiggin is alongside him. Then the top two in the championship, Will Blackwell-Chambers and John Langridge, share row 2. Ahead of Charles Mugglestone and Ollie Graham. Great qualifying efforts from the pair of them. Likewise, David Waters and Jason Greatrex on row 4, ahead of Dave Turton and Adam Bessel, rounding out the top 10. Then it's Alan Hawkins and Seb Fisher, Lewis Cannon and Matt Pollard. And then the rest, 32 cars set to tackle the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit in race 1A. This is only half of the grid. As ever, we have our B grids coming up a bit later on, and we'll have the usual promotion and relegation spots up for grabs. Red lights out though, away we go for the first time here at Donington Park. Foden makes a good start from pole position. Wiggin though not so rapid away from the outside of row number 1, so Blackwell-Chambers comes up the inside into second place, and John Langridge is trying to follow him through as well. I don't know whether Joe Wiggin will be able to close the door. We're on board with John Langridge, the points leader, as we go through Redgate Corner for the first time. He's got the inside line, and Joe Wiggin, as much as he'd like to hang out around the outside and try and get back in front of John Langridge, I don't think that's likely to happen. They're still wheel to wheel though, and this is allowing the top two to pull away slightly. Wiggin and Langridge still toe to toe through the Craner curves, and then that looks as though it's Charles Mugglestone going up the inside into 5th position, having briefly dropped behind, I believe that was Dave Turton, who started 9th on the grid. Right then, Langridge is now into 3rd place. Thumbs up to Joe Wiggin. Let's work together to try and catch the top two. Donington Park, possibly more than any other circuit we race at, will reward good slipstreaming. If you can get away in that lead pack, then that will really, really improve your chances of getting a really good result at the end of the race. But you've got to be in that lead pack, otherwise you run the real risk of falling too far back and then having to contest for positions lower down the order. On board with Adrian Burge now through the right-hander at Coppice, up at the top end of the circuit, down the exhibition straight, side-by-side action in front of us there, which we're going to try and join in with, I'm sure, down the straight. And now we turn left into the chicane rather than right, because we are, as I said, on the full Grand Prix circuit this weekend. Adam Bessel there going around the outside of Dave Turton. Bessel, winner earlier on this season, remember, at Anglesey. Looking to try and get himself back in towards the top 5 running this weekend. Langridge, though, is ahead of Blackwell-Chambers. Look at that, Langridge has gone into 2nd place, and now Wiggin goes up the inside of him into 2nd position as well. So it's all chopping and changing behind Steve Foden, the race leader. It is all kicking off with Joe Wiggin really starting to make progress now, as he so often does. He's on this remarkable winning streak, remember, Joe Wiggin. 5 out of the last 6 races have gone his way, and the race he didn't win, he was still on the podium. Wiggin now, though, trying his best to go after the race leader as they head down towards the Goddard's hairpin for the first time. It is Foden from Wiggin, from Langridge, from Blackwell-Chambers, your top 4. Charles Mugglestone appears to be 5th, ahead of Jason Greatrex. Then Adam Bessel, he's the white and pale blue car, just a little bit separated from this leading pack. Mugglestone up the inside there of the top 2 in the championship. This is a real turn of form here for Charles Mugglestone this weekend. Charles is one of those drivers who, with respect, we've seen on the podium before in the B races, but we've never really seen him this high up the A grid. But look at him, he's alongside Jason Greatrex now, side by side for 5th, as in front of him the top 2 in the championship go wheel to wheel. Langridge fending off Blackwell-Chambers for now. John arrives here with a very, very slender 4-point advantage in the points, and he wants to try and extend that rather than see it shrink. But as you can see, as it's been the case all year really, those two cannot be separated. They are absolutely together. Greatrex up the inside of Mugglestone. 2 red and white cars leaning on each other slightly, and Adam Bessel might get a run on the pair of them as a result of that. Greatrex goes through, but keep an eye on the white and blue car of Adam Bessel. No, ducks back in line. He didn't have enough of a run to get fully alongside them straight away at least, but he might yet have a go on the brakes into the chicane or down into the Melbourne hairpin. Down into the chicane they go then for the second time. There's the Greatrex, Mugglestone and Bessel trio on board with Langridge though, and Blackwell-Chambers has a run coming out of the chicane, so John will almost certainly have to move over to our left, his right, to defend the inside line into the hairpin, which he does. Forces Blackwell-Chambers the long way round. Mugglestone's up the inside of Greatrex though, gets it stopped just about, but slides a bit too wide, and Adam Bessel might get the pair of them. Yes, I think he will. Brilliant reading of the situation there from Adam Bessel. Took the really, really wide line into the Melbourne hairpin, cut back to the late apex, and carried much superior speed up the hill to get past both of them. So through Goddard's he goes, having gained 2 positions now into the top 5 for Adam Bessel. Not bad. He started down in 10th, so after just 2 laps he's already carved his way nicely up the order. Steve Foden, though, leading the way, but Joe Wiggin was quicker than him on the previous lap, and as you can see, Joe is also getting away now from Langridge and Blackwell Chambers. So Joe Wiggin, who is mathematically still in contention for the title, but it would take a little bit of something strange to happen, really, to Langridge and Blackwell Chambers for Joe to realistically challenge for the title. He arrives here still nearly 60 points off the championship lead on dropped scores, that is, as well. If he keeps winning races at the rate at which he's doing at the moment, then anything could yet happen. Down through a grain of curves they come, then into the daunting right-hander at the old hairpin. Fantastic sequence of corners, that, especially in the dry conditions that we're enjoying here in this August race meeting at Donington Park, a little bit earlier in the season than the Mazda MX-5 Championship usually makes its visit to Donington Park. It's traditionally been the scene of the championship decider over recent years, held usually in October under leaden skies and usually on a rather damp racetrack, but this weekend we're enjoying some very, very mild late summer weather, and racing heating up accordingly as well, as the leading quartet now start to break away from the Bessel train behind. Wiggin continuing to reel in Steve Foden. I think with the effect of the slipstream, he's likely to be on his tail by the end of this lap. The question then will be whether or not he can get past him and then escape, crucially, before John Langridge and Will Blackwell Chambers arrive on his tail. Down to the hairpin we come at Melbourne. Joe Wiggin, for the first time this race, is just about close enough to maybe think about showing his nose. Chooses not to on that occasion, though, so Foden holds on to the lead. There's Dave Turtle, look, the dark blue car, running in what will be 8th position at the moment. And then further back, David Waters having a look at the inside. This is very, very close racing, and nice to see these drivers mixing it inside the top dozen or so in an A race. Got Seb Fisher in there as well, the silver and purple number 81 car. We're on board with Michael Close now, heading up to the Goddard's hairpin. We've got some great onboard action from Michael at Anglesey a few rounds ago, and he's back in the championship again now, as Joe Wiggin is in the fight for the race lead. Goes to the outside of Steve Foden into Redgate corner. Watch for the superior exit speed here from Wiggin. The number 41 car gets up the inside line down to Hollywood. He should be able to prise the door open, and Joe Wiggin, remarkably, this run of race victories he's on shows no sign of relenting. He's going for the race lead, but they're side by side through the grain of curves. How did that one work out? Well, we'll try and pick it up in a moment or two. Meanwhile, we check back in on this phenomenal group of cars running inches apart down the hill. Number 24 there at the front of the group is Oliver Graham, and David Waters, behind in the 666 machine. Back on board with Foden then. Now that is no longer Joe Wiggin behind us, it's now John Langridge, in fact not behind us, but going up the inside of us. So yeah, you can see there, Wiggin's got the race lead away. Langridge is now following him through into second place, but Blackwell Chambers, crucially, wasn't close enough to take advantage of that. So Langridge now puts another car between himself and Will Blackwell Chambers. Langridge won't really mind Joe Wiggin winning races as long as he's within touch of him and he's keeping Blackwell Chambers at bay, which at the moment is exactly the situation that John Langridge finds himself in. Seb Fisher, meanwhile, finds a way up the inside of David Waters down into the chicane. Is he late enough on the brakes to make it stick? Well, we'll come back to that in a moment, though, because the leaders are 3 abreast down the hill, and Joe Wiggin really having to get his elbows out now. Steve Foden takes full advantage of that to go around the outside of John Langridge. Meanwhile, Michael Close again is providing us with spectacular onboard footage. He's in the gravel's covering the outside of the car, and it's flown inside the car as well, which is just what he wanted, I'm sure. Thankfully gathers it together, but loses a couple of positions. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, look at what this has done for Blackwell Chambers' prospects, because he's into a podium place now ahead of John Langridge. So that little mix-up between the leading 4 has rather allowed Blackwell Chambers to close back in on them and indeed now get himself ahead of his title rival. So if things finished as they were now, the gap would come down by a couple of points between Langridge and Blackwell Chambers. Foden, though, back into second place, hasn't yet given up hopes of taking the race victory here, I don't think. As I said, the effect of the tow here at Donington Park is particularly exaggerated, and so if you're within sort of 3/4 of a second or so of the car in front, within the length of one flat-out section, you're almost certainly going to be right back on their rear bumper. You saw the effect there of the tow from on board with John Langridge, who goes to the inside of Blackwell Chambers for 3rd place. Lovely move from John Langridge, a little bit sideways at the apex, but makes it stick. And that was a man who is fully aware of what the point situation is right now. He knows that every time that he beats Blackwell Chambers, he pulls a couple of points further away in the championship race, but every time he finishes behind him, that margin that he's got comes down, and it's not a big margin to start with. So Langridge really wants to try and beat Blackwell Chambers in as many races as he can. Will, though, of course, has exactly the same idea, and he's looking back up the inside of Langridge now into the chicane. Pop back out the other side, down to the Melbourne hairpin. Foden, as I sort of predicted, is now back with Joe Wiggin, and this is a good situation here for Foden because he's not under any pressure from the cars behind either, so he's free to attack here without worrying too much about losing ground to Langridge and Blackwell Chambers, who are at the moment a few car lengths adrift, sort of pairing off here, aren't they? 2 for the lead, 2 for third, and then Adam Bessel in 5th position still seem to have some company there from the pair of red and white cars behind them of Mugglestone and Greytrex. Out of the Goddard's hairpin again, there is Bessel, and yes, it's Greytrex in front of him, but Mugglestone isn't actually there, so Mugglestone has dropped back a little way. In fact, Charles Mugglestone, yes, he's lost a couple more places on that lap, so Mugglestone's had a moment somewhere. So it's now a leading group of 6, I guess we can call it, heading into Redgate Corner. Some separation between the little pairs of battling that are going on. Steve Foden then, he's caught back up to Joe Wiggin. Now, can he find a way past him? As I said, 5 of the last 6 races won by Joe Wiggin. Ben Short was the only man to have beaten Joe in the last 2 race meetings, and Ben isn't here this weekend, so the odds are certainly stacked in Wiggins' favour, you'd have to say, in this little duel, but this clearly is a circuit that Foden goes well at. He's got some sort of natural affinity with it, albeit most of the experience he'll have had racing at Donington Park has more than likely come on the national circuit, but the bulk of the track is the same. So Steve clearly has a nice rhythm here. The car's working well. It's all over the back of Wiggin again as they go into Coppice Corner. It's a little mistake maybe at the apex, but he's got the whole run down the exhibition straight to latch back onto the back of Wiggins' car. The trouble for Foden is that Langridge is doing the same to him. Look, John Langridge is getting away slightly from Blackwell Chambers, and he's almost with Steve Foden now, so we're very soon going to have 3 for the lead, and more than likely, as soon as those 3 start jockeying for position, it will become 4, because Blackwell Chambers isn't a million miles behind them. Down the hill, Foden now moving to cover slightly to try and keep Langridge at bay. John Langridge 14 times on the podium this year, but only 3 times a winner. Wiggin and Blackwell Chambers at the moment tied for the most victories of the season with 5 apiece. But Langridge by far the most podium appearances of any driver. Blackwell Chambers has 10 podiums and Joe Wiggin 8. So it's Langridge's consistency rather than regular hit rate of race victories that's making the difference. Yellow flag at the hairpin. Who have we lost? Well, not one of the leaders that I can see. Someone most definitely has had a moment at the hairpin. Looks like it might be someone from that next little group of cars. That's where the yellow flags came from, I think. So leaders all through safely and getting themselves ever closer together now as they make their way back down the Craner curves. Beautiful sequence of corners and a great vantage point as well for the spectators, particularly just behind where our camera position is here down at the old hairpin. There's a huge grass bank, which is a very, very popular spectating point at Donington Park. You can see almost half of the track from there, and it's an all-action circuit as well, one that always produces brilliant racing, and John Langridge has got this move at McLean's down to a T. That's exactly what he did to Blackwell Chambers. He hasn't quite completed the manoeuvre on Steve Foden this time. He's got the inside line again for Coppice Corner, and this is a corner that goes on and on and on and on and on, so you really don't want to be hung out to dry here. Foden needs to be careful as well because Blackwell Chambers isn't a million miles behind, but he's still side by side with Langridge. So fair play here to Steve Foden. Hands out to the cockpit though. Why is that? Are the yellow flags down at the chicane? Maybe, yes, there are yellow flags. There must be a car that's stopped somewhere down near between the chicane and the hairpin, I think, and that's why they've put the yellow flags out. So no overtaking, and that rather scuppered Steve Foden's opportunity to get through. And he's had a bad run through the chicane now, look, so John Langridge pulls alongside him again into the Melbourne hairpin. And Adam Bessel now joining in the fun as well. So it's 4 cars for 2nd place, but that might have been all it took for Joe Wiggin to escape now out in front. If you give Joe a lead like that, he's often very, very difficult to catch again. Final turn, onto another lap they go, and Adam Bessel, another really good performance this from Adam. He has had, I think I'm right in saying, 2 podiums, both of which came at Anglesey, 2nd place in race 1 and then that brilliant victory in race 2. In fact, I tell a lie, he was 2nd again in race 3, so Anglesey was a good weekend for Bessel, but besides Anglesey, he hasn't really been able to show us that sort of form again until now, really. That ability to mix with the leaders is something that we know he has, but a little sporadic at the moment. He'll keep this up though. He's set to move a few places further up the championship table. The old hairpin then, Foden, Langridge, all with Foden looking at John Langridge behind us then, 2nd and 3rd. Well, Chambers does not seem to have the pace, though, to live with these cars in front, so he's now a little bit more concerned with what Adam Bessel's doing behind him. Langridge takes the wide line into McLean's, trying to get the better exit, wasn't able to do it, so Foden hangs on then for now, through Coppice again. Are these still going to work together now to try and catch Joe Wiggin, or is Langridge content with settling for a third and maybe the possibility of snatching second away from Foden? Hands out to the cockpits again as the drivers head down the exhibition straight into that yellow flag zone. Drivers have to slow down going into a yellow flag zone, but of course some drivers will always slow down more than others. There is no set speed that they have to stick to, so Joe Wiggin hoping there that the drivers behind him are playing ball, which they seem to have been. I don't think they gained on him there through that yellow flag section. Now they're set to lose more time again because they are fighting once more through the Melbourne hairpin. Langridge trying everything he can here to get past Foden. There's Blackwell Chambers still ahead of Adam Bessel, so Blackwell Chambers, whilst he'll be disappointed that at the moment it looks like he'll lose another couple of points to John Langridge, things could be worse. Langridge also now has the fastest lap actually, so it will be a 4-point swing this potentially in the favour of Langridge. So Langridge will double his points lead basically if things finish as they are now. Of course, there's every chance that he might get back ahead of Steve Foden before the end of the race, which he's sort of threatened to do a couple of times. Must have thought he had the move made at McLean's a couple of laps ago, but wasn't to be. So he is back in his wheel tracks once again through Hollywood, past the spectator banking again there at the top of the hill. Another great vantage point wherever you go at Donington, really. You get a good view of the circuit. One of the fastest tracks in the country as well, but it's this nice, fast flowing layout that it's got that the drivers really, really enjoy. These relatively low-powered Mark 1 Mazda MX-5s, it's all about momentum. You've got to carry the corner speed because in acceleration they're not the most rapid cars in the world. Certainly when you're accelerating quite steeply uphill, which as you can see from the topography of the Donington Park circuit, is something you do quite regularly. Steve Foden, though, look at this, he's getting away from Langridge now in the middle portion of this lap, so he might even be catching Joe Wiggin again, so I don't think this is quite over yet. Steve Foden just about has time, if he keeps his foot down, to catch Wiggin once more before the flag. It'll take some doing to get past him, even if he can get there, but he's certainly going to give it a good go, I think. Down the hill, into the Melbourne hairpin. You can see visually the gap has come down, though. Steve Foden has just found something this weekend that the others really don't appear to have. Quickest in qualifying, quicker than Joe Wiggin, and Steve Foden at the moment seems to be a little bit quicker than Wiggin again. Steve's had one podium visit this year, which was back at Pembrey in race number 3, behind John Langridge and Ben Short, so he's had a decent season so far, but again a little bit sporadic with his appearances right at the sharp end. This has been by far and away the most impressive showing from the 77 car this year. Into Redgate he goes. Langridge really late on the brakes there, trying to stay with him, but doesn't seem able to do so. Blackwell Chambers, though, seems to have actually seen off the challenge from Adam Bessel for the time being. So actually the top 5 are fairly static at the moment. Race their way down the parade of curves, and Blackwell Chambers, the #1 car, the reigning champion. This, of course, was the circuit at which he won the championship last year in the most dramatic of fashion against Sam Smith. This year, though, he arrives here at Donington Park behind in the points and trying to do something about it. But right now, things not going his way. As we stand, he would be set to fall further behind Langridge. Steve Foden not really falling any further behind Joe Wiggin, is he? He's continuing to inch back towards him. He needs to just get within that slipstreaming range. If he can get maybe 2 or 3 car lengths closer, then the last half a second disappears in a flash because you've got the tow, you've got the slipstream. Got a bit of a tow there, I think, down the straight, and then of course they slow down for that yellow flag zone, which will be definitely having an effect. And it looks like the yellow flags are going to stay there for the duration of the race now too, so that will be one less overtaking opportunity the drivers have, but Steve Foden very shortly will be looking for overtaking opportunities, I think, because he's almost there now. He's bringing Langridge with him, though. Langridge has had a better lap this time around, so the top 3 are almost back together again now. To the final turn, Goddard's, this very tight left-hander. Foden takes a nice wide line in look, because he knew that he was far enough ahead of Langridge that he didn't have to defend from him. So he could take the wide line in and really focus on the exit speed, but we're going on to the final lap of the race now, so has Steve Foden got enough time to do this? He's caught Wiggin, now he needs to try and find a way past him. He will probably only get one chance at this as well, because if he goes for a move and it doesn't work, then he'll spend the rest of the final lap defending from Langridge behind him, who is close enough to take advantage. So Foden, he really doesn't have any championship points to worry about. He's just out there for the best results that he can get, and he's right with Wiggin now as they go through the old hairpin. He's going to have a chance. He's going to have one chance, and it's probably going to be into McLean's, the next corner, through Starkey's, the next left-hand kinkish Schwantz curve. That sets you up for the right-hander at McLean's corner, and surely Wiggin will defend to the inside line, which he sort of does, goes down the middle of the road. Steve Foden, I don't think, wanted to fully commit to the inside there. He gets a better exit, does he? No, can't get up the inside still. Was that his last chance? Will he have another shot down into the hairpins, maybe? Oh, Langridge really closing in on Foden into Coppice corner. 3 cars then, as one, with about a third of a lap still to go. Traditionally, we will be heading down into the final corner of the race now, but we've got that extra run down to the Melbourne Loop, which is by far and away the best overtaking opportunity on the circuit. And if Steve Foden can get a really good exit from this chicane, he might be able to force Joe Wiggin into a mistake. He's certainly forcing him to defend. Down the hill they go. Langridge to the outside. Which way does Foden go? He's sort of stuck in the middle, really. As long as Wiggin doesn't run wide at the apex, which he makes absolutely sure he does not, then it looks as though he might be able to do enough to hang on. In fact, Langridge has a go at Steve Foden instead. Langridge alongside Foden for second place into the final corner. These would be some very valuable championship points for John Langridge, but he's on the outside line and cannot afford contact here. Foden up the inside line. Oh, locks up. Langridge goes out wide. That was almost complete calamity for the championship leader there. Joe Wiggin will hang on to take his 6th victory from the last 7 races. A remarkable mid-season run of form for Joe Wiggin. Second place goes the way eventually of Steve Foden by just under 0.2 of a second, with Langridge third and Blackwell Chambers losing 4 championship points there to his big rival, only 4th at the flag. Rounding out the top 5 was Adam Bessel. Matt Pollard came through to finish in 6th ahead of Seb Fisher and Jason Greatrex. Dave Turton gets a good top 10 finish, with Oliver Graham rounding out that top 10. Oliver was actually given a 5-second penalty for exceeding track limits. Charles Mugglestone was next, then David Waters, Jack Moody, Jack Rawls and William Hayden rounding out the top 15 runners. We had one non-finisher, Pete Tyler. Lewis Cannon was disqualified, so they will automatically be relegated, along with Ollie Attard, Adrian Burge and Doug McGregor.
I don't know about yourself, but I was on the edge of my seat watching that. I didn't know what was going to happen when you came back around to lap.
I was on the edge of my seat as well at the end. Thanks again to Eco Trailer, CN Science, Tucker Motorsport, my mum and stepdad for all their help. Steve got into the back of me at the last corner, and we had a touch, and I thought it was all over. I thought it was going sideways, but managed to just hold it, and we got the win, so that's all that matters. And hopefully here's for a couple more podiums.
Well, fingers crossed we'll have you back. So starting on pole for the next round, is there anything you need to do technically to the car?
No, just need to get a new engine, but that's not happening until the end of the year. So, we're in track position again. I'm going to make it a race and let them boys play behind me.
Fantastic. Right, well, hopefully another win comes this afternoon.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Thank you.
Steve, you held your own in that race. I know there was a few technical things before you coming into this. Was that playing on your mind at all?
It was a little bit, to be honest, but I just kind of had a chat with Mike before the race, and he just said, look, just keep it. This is a new race. Just forget about everything before and go out there and do what you know what to do. And that's what I did.
There was a couple of sections there where you dropped down, and John managed to get past you, but you were holding your own. You were all of the back of him.
Yeah, well, it's the memories from last year, and obviously the first time to the visit to this podium, and I think that's kind of that fighting spirit stayed with me all through the winter and back to this round. So I think that's the reason why I was kind of itching to keep John back behind me. It's the first time I've managed to keep him behind me, so I'm very pleased with myself, to be honest.
Well, you'll be starting behind Joe Wiggins. Obviously, John's right there next to him, and Will be beside you. How are you feeling? Because that's some big boys up there.
Yeah, well, I mean, the pace this year has been pretty good, and obviously we had a bit of a bad weekend at Anglesey with a disqualification, and since then we've just kind of taken a step back and just been approaching things slightly differently, and I do feel a lot more comfortable up with the top boys now.
Good, well, we wish you the best of luck for the next round.
Thanks, Lyndsay.
John, I can't even explain how high my heart rate was watching you in that. I can only imagine what yours was.
Yeah, pretty calm. It always looks more frantic from the outside, but it was pretty frantic the last couple of corners there when we all closed up.
So obviously Joe managed to get the pip and then Stephen was keeping you fighting the whole way. What were you thinking with Will being right there in the background?
Yeah, we were quite close for a while. After a while, we sort of pulled away the top three, which was very nice. So I was pushing to go forwards because the Blink car was so good. And you know, we've got fresh cold here today, so I want to give them some joy. So I tried my hardest, but at the end, I was quite happy.
Well, fingers crossed we see more action from your good self in race 2.
Yeah, it'll be spicy tomorrow.